Chapter 12: The Russian Makarov and Freedom. The heat of the summer became a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that lay over the town. The air in their windowless room was stagnant and thick, smelling of sweat and despair. The incident with the suite had changed everything. A silent, cold war now existed between Lal Deen and Kadim. Lal Deen did his work with robotic efficiency, his eyes always downcast, but behind the submission was a constant simmering calculation. He watched Kadim, studied his routines, and searched for a weakness, a crack in the prison walls. Gulab too had changed. The already quiet child had retreated further into silence. He flinched at sudden movements and rarely smiled. The light in his eyes, which the suite had briefly rekindled, had been extinguished. Lal Deen's promise to his father, "You look after your brother," echoed in his mind like a taunt. He was failing. He was providing existence, but he was stealing a childhood. One blisteringly hot afternoon, Lal Deen returned from his rounds earlier than usual. The heat had been so intense that even Kadim had called them back. The house was quiet. The other boys were probably sleeping in the relative cool of the courtyard. Lal Deen had to hand over the day's earnings and the collected scrap to Kadim. He went to the man's room, the one place in the house he dreaded. The door was ajar. He pushed it open slowly. The room was empty, but he could hear the sound of water running from the attached bathroom. Kadim was taking a shower. On the bed, tossed carelessly aside, was the man's familiar worn leather jacket. Lal Deen stood frozen in the doorway. This was his chance. He could leave the tin and the money on the bed and slip away. But something held him there. A dangerous, magnetic pull drew his eyes to the jacket. He had seen Kadim take things from its pockets. Money, a small knife, keys. What else was in there? The sound of the shower water was a steady drumbeat, masking the sound of his own frantic heartbeat. He took a step into the room, then another. His breath was shallow. This was madness, if Kadim caught him, but the image of Gulab's terrified face, the memory of the slap, pushed him forward. He reached the bed. With a trembling hand, he reached out and touched the rough leather of the jacket. He glanced at the bathroom door. The water was still running. He slipped his hand into the first pocket. Empty. The second pocket held a few crumpled rupee notes and a key. Then his fingers brushed against something cold and hard in an inside pocket. He curled his fingers around it and pulled it out. It was a pistol. It was heavier than he expected, a solid, deadly weight in his small hand. It was blued steel with a brown plastic grip. It felt alien and terrifying. He had seen guns before, of course. Every man in the hills seemed to have one, but he had never held one. This was different. This was a Russian Makarov, a weapon of the enemy, the very kind that had killed his parents. How had Kadim gotten it? The irony was bitter and sharp. As he stared at it, his mind racing, his thumb accidentally found a curved piece of metal, a trigger. His heart hammered against his ribs, a mixture of fear and a strange, powerful feeling. The feeling of holding death in his hands coursed through him. Without thinking, driven by a child's morbid curiosity and a surge of adrenaline, he curled his finger around the trigger and pulled. The explosion was catastrophic in the small, quiet room. Bang! The sound was deafening, a sharp, violent crack that seemed to tear the air apart. The pistol jumped in his hand, a firefly of flame spitting from the end of the barrel. A bullet slammed into the mud brick wall opposite, spraying dust and fragments across the room. The shockwave traveled up his arm, numbing it. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled his nostrils. For a moment he was utterly disoriented, his ears ringing, his mind a blank slate of terror. What had he done?